Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that can be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help our other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing we call life. And on today's episode, we will be answering questions that we asked you, some of our listeners, to send in to us. And we have those questions and we're going to be talking through them tonight. So this is a little bit different from our normal format, but I think we can have a little bit of fun with this and hopefully provide some nuggets in the process. So, question number one. First question we have is, what do you feel is a helpful piece of information or wisdom you would share with your early adult age self? Early adult age meaning 19 to 23 years
Hold
old.
on, stop, Kev.
Dr.
Oh,
Dan.
That's not the question that's on the screen.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm sorry. I was looking at the. All right. Well, we're gonna start.
The counter begins.
Your younger self would learn how to read.
John set me up. I didn't realize he was gonna put that on the front. I thought he added it to the back.
Yeah, there ain't no way that whatever list you had was in the right order. It ain't no way. The way these questions been trickling in, there's no way that you got the question right. It's not. It's not possible.
Man. All right. Well, who wants to tackle that first one? What is your favorite movie and why?
Favorite movie.
Like he wanted.
All right. Well, I'll start.
Go ahead, B.
Oh, B, you want to start?
Oh man, I would say Malcolm X, the one with Denzel. I like that movie only because Spike Lee took the whole time to transition in the movie from Malcolm X's beginning to his end, and I think it was just a true depiction of Malcolm X and some of the things that he did as far as making a transition, not only for the people, but his own self. And a lot of times people don't want to show that true side. They don't want to show the bad stuff. They only want to see the glory stuff. But, my favorite part of that movie is when he was at the hospital and it was like, you need to disperse these people.
Yeah.
And he just put his hand up, bam. And white police officers like, it's too much power for one man to hold. So that's I would say that in 300. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Malcolm X.
All right. I like those choices too, B. And the one thing I will say about the Malcolm X movie, man, the cop really didn't say that's too much power for one man to hold. He said that's too much power for one black man to hold. That's what was said, and I'm keeping it clean there. But I'll jump in. I'll say my favorite movie of all time. I've got two. One is Blazing Saddles. The other one is Smokey and the Bandit. And those two movies, just for the comedy alone, I absolutely love those movies. But they couldn't get made today and not in this environment. But the one movie that I really appreciated the most out of everything, and it's funny, I'm wearing the shirt, Black Panther. Black Panther was my favorite comic book character of all time, and to be able to see my black cartoon hero on screen, and he's an actual king, and he's powerful and smart. That movie just it really made my day, and I went to see that thing 3 times in the movie theater the first week that it came out, the opening day, and then 2 days after that. I went to see it again and again, and I really enjoyed that movie. So I'll start with Black Panther. That's my favorite now, So I'll step aside. Next person.
I'm gonna say Minister Society because when I was 17, that was such an accurate depiction of my life, and I could really. Not just the violence and part you think of, but coming to a point in life where you're making a decision. So that was one of my favorites. Like, we love Boys in the Hood, but Minister Society felt like the dialogue was more in tune with how things were really going on in our lives. And it felt good, for us to be represented, we had the gangster, but we also were trying to make decisions about school and life and all of that other stuff too. And but I would say now, man, The Wood, man, that movie take me back. I just like it. It's just hilarious, like, and it feels so real, like dancing in the living room and all
Oh
of that.
yeah.
Like that's real life. So yeah, like when Stacy said, "Man, I remember them middle school dances." That's my movie right there.
Yeah, for me, I'll work backwards and I'll do it quickly. But I would say, and Ray and I have had this discussion a lot about Blazing Saddles and Smokey and the Bandit. Those are probably three and four for me actually. But number two for me is probably Love Jones. And the reason I love Love Jones as much as I do is because it's the first movie that I can recall being made where they had young black folks who were like my age, right, at that time, who were about something, right? They were about doing something. They were heading places in their life. So I fell in love with it for that reason. But my all-time favorite movie, which has always been my all-time favorite movie, will probably shock the majority of you and probably the most of my listeners. But
I
it's
already know
Grease.
it.
Grease. Grease is actually my all-time favorite movie, and I'll tell you why. And rest in peace to my girl too. Olivia Newton-John. But the reason that it's my all-time favorite is because I had this secret love of musicals, right? When I was a kid. My mom, from the time I can remember, my mom loved musicals. She loved Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly. I want to say Singing in the Rain might be her all-time favorite. But I used to secretly like those movies when I was a kid. I don't know why. There was some element to them that I really enjoyed, but they never felt up to date, right? They still felt old. And so when Grease came out, I was 7 years old, and when it first aired on television, I was 10, right? And so at that age, and loving musicals, and all of a sudden you have this movie that's kind of racy, right? It's more up to date. It's about high school. It's it had a bad boy element to it. It had all of these different things that were so much different from the ones that I saw my mom watch, and I just fell in love with it. And to this day, it's still just my all time favorite movie. If Grease is on, I'll watch it. It does not matter where it's at in the movie. It could be toward the end, and I'm going to watch it. So that may shock a lot of people, but yeah, I love Grease. I always have, always will. That's my movie. Oh,
Yeah, can you hear me?
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, wow, this was hard for me. I mean, I'm not really a big movie buff, but there are some movies that I just really. I mean, I loved them so much. I went out and bought them so I could watch them over and over again. So I'll go in order. So, Boys in the Hood. Uh, I enjoy Boys in the Hood because for me it depicted, a black father who's trying to do the right thing, by looking out for his son, and that really resonated with me in the midst of all the chaos and streets. He was really about taking care of his son and trying to keep him safe. So I really enjoyed Boys in the Hood. Uh, but growing up in Philadelphia, I tell you another one that resonated with me was The Godfather. I absolutely love The Godfather, and it's just something about that time. You know, when being a gangster was kind of cool. They were on one end, ruthless, and then on the other end, devoted to family, and stood for things and had principles. But if you cross them, you might end up with a horse in the bed, right? A horse head in the bed. So,
Sleeping with the fishes.
yeah. Yeah, and then of course, I absolutely love Jones as well. I mean that I could watch that movie like every day, over and
Absolutely.
over again. Because I think it really depicted how young African Americans that age probably really related to one another, especially in Chicago. And other places where they had uh, what I call Kevin Danley's atmosphere.
Dare I
being,
ask?
being the Renaissance man and the
Don't ask.
metrosexual that he is, poetry reading, yeah. So in fact, every time I see that movie, I think about Kevin. I'm like, yeah, that's Kev up there reading this stuff.
Yeah, man. That's that. Even though I haven't written in years, unfortunately, I'm not even sure if it's a talent. Unfortunately, I haven't honed it in a lot of years. I used to write constantly when I was younger, and now I need to get back to it at some point if it's still there. But yeah, anyway, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're fine. And then of course, probably people would not guess this either, but probably my favorite movie is Save the Last Dance. Yeah, that's my joint there. I mean, the music was great. The storyline, I liked how they introduced her coming from an environment that she grew up in and knew very well into the inner city of Chicago. And then what that life was about, going to a school that was predominantly African American. That was new for her as well. And, and then going from, being this great, ballet dancer, trying to get into Juilliard, to really learning how to do the hip hop dance, and that was cool too. And then of course, dating one of the guys in the school that everyone thought was going to get out and do something with his life, and then she shows up, and now all of a sudden, since you're here, you're taking one of our good ones away, and I think we've seen and heard that so many times before. But the bottom line is, you love who you love, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody needs to go see Save the Last Dance now. Rod just kind of gave you all the whole movie, so
yeah, no doubt. Well, that's what made it so good. So if you hadn't seen it, that's the entire plot.
We started out asking for one favorite movie. We all did about 3 or 4.
I know, right?
Hey, I left Superfly out and Shaft. A whole bunch of black exploitation.
Look at Ray. Ray is determined. He said, "We are not going to get through all of these questions. I want to get on the first one for the whole show." And he is determined. Time be damned.
Look, Ray, old Shaft, the new Shaft, Ray.
Oh, no, the old one, the original, the original Shaft and the original Superfly. Come on now, bro.
All right, what's question number 2? What do you feel is a helpful piece of information, wisdom, which that's the one I started reading, if you would share with your early adult age self, 19 to 23 years old?
I'll jump right in on that one. The thing that I would, if I could go back and tell myself and give myself some wisdom, would be to invest, even if it was like $50 a month into various stocks, just to grow that nest egg instead of waiting until I got into my, mid 30s to get started with that. That's something I would definitely do, at least instead of saving $50 or what have you a month in a bank account, I would invest it into stocks, into companies. And then the other thing I would do is I would tell myself, hey, you don't need that new car every couple of years, because that was one of those things where, the youth just took over. I saw something I wanted, I went and got it, and it went in cars. And Rod said it last week or 2 weeks ago. Cars depreciate the moment you drive them off the lot. So if I could, those 2 things I would definitely tell myself, which would definitely be helpful further along the line. Invest at least $50 a month to start, and not to buy new cars, just to get one and ride that thing till the doggone wheels fell off. But that's what I would do.
For me, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, for me, man, I was 19 to 23 years old. That was a really fun time in life. So, I'm not going to put the burden of being super deep. Matter of fact, I'm going to be super shallow. I got into college late, but, when was out there meeting new people, different experiences. Like I almost just feel like, with the exception of early military years, there's no way you can really replace that experience I got being in college those years. And I would just say, man, one of the things that I was terrible at was, and this isn't everything, whether it was talking to the ladies, whether it was, finishing my classes, I just never had that killer instinct. And I would just say, man, you should have just saw a lot more stuff all the way through. You would have had a lot more fun than you did. I had a lot of fun, but just see it all the way through. Don't just kind of get to the end. See it all the way through. That's all I would say.
Oh man.
You should have met somebody we know very well. Then they'd have carried you through.
I don't know why you're talking about Byron like that. He's sitting right there, but yeah.
Don't put my name in that Festus. I ain't nothing to do with that.
For me, I would say one, meditate. Right, start meditating. I would have started meditating a lot earlier than I did in life, but probably the biggest thing would be to don't take anything personally. Most of the time, things aren't even about you. And, I've always had kind of a quick temper. And a lot of that was because I took everything personally. Fortunately, I'm better at that. I'm not perfect, but I'm a lot better. And, just realizing that people's stuff is their stuff, right? Nothing that's coming at you is really personally. It's not really ever about you. It's always about them. So not to take anything personally. That's probably the wisdom I would give myself if I could go back to being 19 to 23.
Yeah, so I'll go then. So I think for me, it would be to be a lot more disciplined, and that might even sound strange to people that know me, because I mean I never did anything outlandish, but personally I knew that the lack of discipline, the lack of follow through, like John had mentioned, was a shortcoming. So that would be that, and then the other one would be uh, keep that hustler's mentality that I saw while I was growing up in the people around me. Because I think I don't want to go back to 2 weeks ago talking about our financial literacy, but I think that a lot of what ails a lot of people is that we become too dependent on others to eat, right? Instead of fending for ourselves. So I think just having that mentality where you go and you create the life that you want for yourself. Because I think we're all been blessed with enormous gifts. We just don't take full advantage of them. So that would be mine.
Oh man. 19 to 23, I was perfect, so it didn't matter.
All right, Myron.
No, I would say that was the time frame when I came into the military, and I had a guy who was a tech sergeant. He was like, "Man, go back to school, come in as a commissioned officer." And I was like, "No, I'm just going right now because I'm tired of this. I need to do it right now." And if I just would have taken his advice and just went back to school, got that degree, and then come into the military, got commissioned, things would have been different. I'm very fortunate for the way things have turned out, but just sometimes just listening to people at that age, because we was at that age, we knew everything. I had an uncle was telling me then, you need to start buying mutual funds. I'm like, what is mutual funds? I don't know nothing about that. That's a waste of money. I'm not doing that. You know what I'm saying? Nobody. So there's a whole lot of things we could have done different. I know for me, I could have done mutual funds like Ray was talking about. I would have came in as a commissioned officer. So that was that for me. I would say if there's one thing, it's a little bit of everything that everybody was saying, but that one thing I would have probably been better off by now.
No, because you wouldn't have probably met all of us. So,
Exactly.
Facts.
and that's the only, so when you think about things, when you start going back changing those types of decisions, because I thought about that too, getting
Mhm.
commissioned and all, but
Uh-huh.
but I would tell you, I've met people that have enriched my life in ways that becoming a colonel would not have given me. So
Facts.
you
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
anyway, next question.
If you could speak to any past, present activist, politician, writer, etc., who fought for the rights of Black people, who would that be, and what is one thing you would want to ask them? I'll go ahead and start on that. Anyone who knows me knows that Malcolm X is absolutely my hero. Malcolm X and Gil Scott Heron are my two favorite, uh, you know, just people of all time, essentially. But Malcolm X is number one. And if I could ask him one question, it would be, knowing what you know now, if you had to do this all over again, would you do it? Would you have taken the same path? And the thing is, I'm almost certain his answer would be the same as mine, because this is kind of along the lines of what we were just talking about. Anytime people ask that question, I'm actually not a fan of that question. I'm really not, because I wouldn't want to go back and change anything. I love who I am. I love who I'm still becoming, right? So I wouldn't want to change a single thing about my past, because any one thing could have set me on a different path. And so my guess is that Malcolm X's response would be the same. But the reason I would want to ask him that question is because I would want to hear how nuanced he answers that question, right? I would want to know why, because again, I'm guessing he would say no, he wouldn't change anything. He would have taken that same path, but I would want to hear all the reasons why, and kind of the nuanced details that he would give in responding to why he would stay on that same path. So that would be the question I would ask him.
Well, I'll jump in as well. And it's funny, Kev, because I put down Malcolm X, and because my question to him would be, would he be open to collaborating with Medgar Evers, with Dr. King, or would he stay with you know the militant language? And like you said, I know the answer is he would stay exactly the way that he was, but I mean, you touched on it perfectly. I'm sure he would. I would want to hear his exact reasoning as to why he would, choose to do things the same way that he did them before. So that's why I just wanted to jump in real quick, because it was funny. I felt like you read my paper.
Yeah, that's my dude right there. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I would probably, I mean, you just want to go back, I would say either Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass. More so Frederick Douglass, because here, how I would like to know, how did that feel when you walked into a group of white people, knowing that you were more educated than they were, but they still tried to disqualify you for who you were as a black man, right? And then so you have this knowledge, you have this skill set, and you still have to belittle yourself to these people who have nowhere near your level of education, nowhere near your level of experience, and then you still have to represent even back then, we still, everywhere we go as a black people, you still got to represent your people. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you were able to differentiate yourself as a black man, but still be connected to your black people. But then when you walk into an environment that are non-black people, you still be able to, walk with your head up, regardless of them trying to put you in the back of the room. You like, no, I'm qualified to be here, and this is why. So I would love to see back then, how did you just every day get yourself motivated to go back out into, basically it was a cruel world for people of color back then, but how did you motivate yourself every day to get up and go back out and do it again.
And too, real quick, B, the funny thing, and not the funny thing, is not only did he catch hell from a lot of white people for obvious reasons, but then his second wife was white, right? And so when he married her, he caught hell from the black community. So he
Yeah,
was catching it from all ends, and he was kind of, a lot of black folks were trying to discredit him even after everything he had done,
yeah,
right, and stood for the black community, simply because he married a white woman. But in any case, yeah, go ahead. John, Rod.
I oh Rod's talking. Are you on mute?
No, I said I'll defer to you.
Okay.
Oh.
I would say Shirley Chisholm.
oh yeah,
I would like to ask her, with all of her political acumen, her charisma, and everything she did, I would ask her, looking at the current political landscape, how would she advise um, political leaders and potential political leaders how they should move in this landscape with her experience? I mean, it's just amazing that we're talking about her in that level at the time she did it, because we still
yeah,
ain't there in
yeah.
2022. So I'd like to pick her brain on, like, if she looked strategically, how would she navigate this political landscape in 2022?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so mine is actually similar along those lines. The person is different, and it's Barbara Jordan, and it would be a similar question, having to stand apart uh, and achieve all that she did, under, I'm sure, difficult times and circumstances, and people trying to make everything hard for her. But what advice she would give to help navigate the current political environment, and also what we might want to focus on to help, African Americans specifically uh, become less dependent on the government, and more dependent on the gifts that they've been blessed with. So that's who, and that's what I would ask her.
Cool.
Wow, nobody said they would want to talk to Iceberg Slim as to why he wrote Mama Black Widow.
You know what? You know what?
I'm sorry. He was just saying I had to say it.
How important is vulnerability to men?
I'll start. So vulnerability, I think, is extremely important. Or let me rephrase that. It should be extremely important to men. I think, one of the things that we've probably come short on is allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, right? And that's for so many different reasons. I think everyone has their own reasons, but the lack of trust that you have, whether that's in the systems or the people around you, right? I think caused us to be less vulnerable and to understand the importance of being that, which is why we've probably, and I won't speak for everyone, I don't want to generalize African American men, but I will say, as I look back at my own life and at the lives of some that I've known very well, the reason why, some of us, struggled in relationships, because we were taught that we had to be a certain way in order to survive the treacherous streets that we grew up in, and you couldn't show any weakness, right? So, so you never wanted to ever look like you were vulnerable in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So, but I do think it's important that we understand the importance of being that and showing that and getting to a level of trust with people in our lives, especially those closest to us, where they can see us be vulnerable and recognize that at the end of the day, we're human, just like the next man or woman, and and in being human, we have all these other things that we deal with, the range of emotions that we deal with, obstacles that we have to overcome, uh, but recognizing that vulnerability is something that's indicative of the human nature.
I agree with you, Rod, and I'll just say real quick for me, I believe vulnerability is very important for us as men as well. Um, because one thing I had to learn about myself is I had to stop worrying about what other people thought about me, especially women, my partners, my wives, what have you, because I was worried about, like you said, appearing weak, appearing to be soft, instead of it was I looked at it as if it was a weakness instead of a strength, and to me, being able to cry in front of my wife, in front of my daughter. To me, I'm like, I've said it to my daughter, if I can't cry in front of you, who in the hell can I cry in front of? Because I don't want my daughter to think I'm this machine. I'm not. Like you said, I want to appear human. We are human. And so to me, again, absolutely, I agree with you. Vulnerability is a strength. And we have to get away from that stigma of being vulnerable as being soft or being weak.
Yeah, I think vulnerability has levels to it, just like we trust people at a certain level. I think being vulnerable or being vulnerable to your partner is going to be different to your vulnerability in your workplace, or if you're going to school, whatever. It's going to be different. And I think sometimes um, when you don't understand that there is levels to that, you just try to lump everything into one category or one. If you're vulnerable to this person, you're vulnerable to everybody. And I think people have to earn that place in your life. And so we have to, and it's okay. I think if vulnerability is good, but however, people have to earn that trust or earn that position of vulnerability in your life as well. And if you don't share that with everybody, if everybody's not in access to that place in your life, I think it's okay. I don't think we should beat ourselves up about that. But yes, there are some people that we do have to be, especially with our children, family members. There's some people that may, because of our inability to be vulnerable, we've impacted relationships that we've had with people that are close to us. And so, yes, I think it is important that we go back and maybe make sure we, in those relationships, that we are vulnerable. But I think also believe there's levels to that, and everybody can't have access to that vulnerability. That's just my book 101.
Yeah, no, like everyone else, I agree. I think I can't speak for all men, but I will say exactly what Rod said. I think it should be important to all men. And to Byron's point, I do think that it requires a level of trust. A lot of people think that vulnerability is a sign of weakness, and that's based on that kind of toxic masculinity that we talked about in the past. But vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. If anything, it takes courage to be vulnerable. And kind of in the words of the queen of vulnerability, Brene Brown, who talks about um, vulnerability kind of being based on this mutuality, right? It requires boundaries and trust. Again, to Byron's point, and it's kind of about sharing our feelings and our experiences with people who have earned the right to hear those things. It should be based on mutuality. And it's also kind of a huge part of trust building, the trust building process. Like when you think about any relationship, whether it's romantic or not, um, it's an important thing. And it takes vulnerability to kind of share your story and tell your story and talk about your failures to people as well. And one of the reasons that that's important is because you never know what someone can gain from hearing your story, right? So being vulnerable enough to share those things with other people can change someone's life. It really can. It can change someone's life. So.
Yeah, I think off the rip, if you reframe the question, how important is vulnerability for men? Is absolutely essential. But to take it to how important is vulnerability to men, when you look at masculinity, especially in its toxic forms, and you look at the standard of what manhood is, especially for Black men, we would have to admit that often we have not presented ourselves as if vulnerability is important to us. We know it's important for us. And part of vulnerability is, the emotional intelligence. And the thing as men is a lot of times we don't have the language to describe the way we're feeling and to communicate that to the people that we love. And, some of the work that I've been doing in therapy and, some self-work is that, as I'm seeking a romantic relationship, I understand, it's important to have vulnerability. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, we were talking about this, and she said, yeah, so whenever your woman is asking, what are you thinking? We're trying to, connect. And so when I said, wow, so instead of just saying, leave me alone, now I can say, I'm thinking that the best thing that ever happened to me is to be with you, women, what I'm saying? But I realized that in that pursuit, that vulnerability isn't just for romantic relationships. I owe this vulnerability in all of my relationships. All of the people that have stayed beside me, whether I deserved it or not, that love me and care for me, to include you, brothers. And that vulnerability is not something that we're taught. We're taught, yeah, you don't cry. Like I'm scared of snakes. And I was at my partner's house. And I'm from South Texas, man. Snakes and South Texas go together. And I was at my partner's house, and we've been partners for 20 years or so. And it was a little rattlesnake by the edge of his garage. I did not leave that house. And when he got back, and he was like, hey, man, why you ain't left the house? I saw it was a snake down there, and I just shoot it out with my rake or whatever. But he like, you been here the whole time? And I'm like, oh, yeah, man, I just been chilling. I didn't even know it was out there. I didn't even getting well. I walked out there, saw that snake, and I'm like, whatever I got to do today, I ain't doing it till that snake goes somewhere else, And as simple as that, just being more vulnerable in these important relationships. And we struggle with that. So I think it's important for us, and it's important to us to pick up that language and to pick up those skills.
Got it. Agreed.
Question number 5. What are some myths/misconceptions you had under 30 that were proven to be way off base? Interesting.
Next question.
Well, I'll tell you mine. So I think one of the biggest ones was that the blueprint that we were given uh, as we climbed the ladder towards success, and it was laid out for us, you know, get good grades in school, so that you can get into a good college. For those that even went to college, right? Because prior to me going to college, I didn't have any examples of that uh, that I knew of, at least on one side of the family. But then, so that you can study something and graduate and go get a great job at it and work that job for 30 years and retire, and then ride off the rest of your life in sunset doing whatever that thing is that you want to do once you've studied and got educated and worked, and now that you're done working you can kind of go do what you want. So, and I say that was I found that to be a myth or misconception, because what I've learned since is that as you go down that path and along that journey, a lot of times you have forsaken the things that are really most important to you because you want to be dependent on, just think about it, folks in the military. Well, if you do 10, you got to do 20 without realizing what you could actually get accomplished in 10 years if you were to get out and bet on yourself.
Right.
Right. So I think that today's younger generation, I think they get it. I think their entrepreneurial spirit is more, intact because pensions are not there for them. So they had no choice but to figure out some other way, you know. And so I really like what I see in the young people today. You know, makes me wish I could go back 20 years and jump in the game with them. You know, but still, I would say that that's the myth or misconception that I had when I was, under 30. That has certainly been, to me, proven to be off base. And that's not to say that I wouldn't have continued and, retired from the military or what have you, but I would have thought real long and hard about it, you know, because I have a whole nother diatribe about the military or the government uh, itself, and I think what it does to the public. So, anyway, that's it for me.
I'm gonna piggyback off Rod in the military. I thought, yeah, I'm coming into the Air Force. Everybody's sharp. I ain't gonna deal with no racism. Everybody gonna want to come to work on time. Ain't no lazy people. And I'm like, oh my God. By the time I got done with tech school, I realized I should have stayed on the street, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm dealing with the same people. They just got on a uniform. And so that was probably that was it for me, man. I'm thinking I'm going to the military. I'm just going to Air Force. I'm just going to jump and hang out with just the elite, the best of the best. Everybody's excited, motivated about where they're going in life, and that ain't the case, brother. So I found that out real quick. But I'm not saying everybody, but you run into them people that you're like, how did you get in? And so yeah, that was probably it, because I was thinking, yeah, the military, that's the best people in the world. They get stuff done, and that is not the case. So
Man,
way off base.
yeah, I'm taking all my answers. I'm gonna jump up in here real quick with this one. The misconception that has really been busted for me is I really was on that earn your way to wealth. I was gonna be able to trade my time for big money. Like if I found the right job with the right numbers, it was gonna happen. Man, that misconception has been busted wide open. Yeah, so
Uh, I'm gonna have to piggyback with what both Rod and Byron was saying. Probably more specifically Byron. I came in the military thinking, yeah, racism is probably not going to be a big thing in the military, right? I mean, everybody, we have to have each other's backs, right? We have to go to war together. So, your race doesn't matter, your gender doesn't matter. We have to have each other's backs and all of these sorts of things. And lo and behold, I didn't take me very long of being in the military to encounter racism. So I found out quickly that that wasn't the case. And so that was probably, I would say, maybe my biggest misconception. As a matter of fact, I mean, there were even some people that I thought were maybe not friends, but certainly associates that I thought, you know, um, you know, were, good associates, good friends, whatever the case is. And then as soon as the George Floyd thing happened, man, I tell you, people showed their true colors, literally and figuratively speaking. After that, and I found out there were quite a few folks that I thought were real cool. Some folks that you all know, that we were in the military with, and then all of a sudden you start seeing things that they post, regarding Trump and regarding, George Floyd and defunding cops and all of these different things, and you're like, wow. So that's the person you are. I've known you for 20 plus years and I never realized that. I thought you were cool, so, end up having to unfriend, unfollow, ditch those people. I don't wish any of them any harm. But yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, without getting too much deeper into that, that's mine.
Well, I'll piggyback off of you, Rod, and Byron, because yeah, the racism thing. I'll go back further. I'll go back to O.J. Simpson. You know, I'll never forget. I was in base operations, and this one pilot, when they read off the not guilty verdict, well, yeah, that's what did they expect? They had 8.5 black people on the jury, and I looked at him like, "What do you mean by that?" And he turned around and looked up. I didn't mean anything like that. Yeah, you meant everything
Yes,
you
you
said.
did.
So we're gonna skip on past that. But I know we've talked about it before. One of the misconceptions I had, there was might be something wrong with me if I went to see a mental health professional. I learned quick, fast, and in a hurry that that again, there's nothing wrong with that. But then one thing I had a misconception of, and I was over 30, and John can relate to me with this. Walk into a room with Kevin Danley, and that cloak of invisibility hits you.
Oh
Don't
my
nobody
God.
see you except they didn't
Oh
see
my
me,
Lord.
6'4". They didn't see John, but they
Nope.
saw, hey Kevin, how you
Yep.
doing?
That's
So
it.
that was a misconception that got thrown
Oh my
completely out the
word.
window.
Oh, that's
That
a
was
true
true.
story. That really happened. That's
Yep.
a true story. That happened. That happened.
Right. That's
That
just
was a
one.
true story.
That's just one of the stories.
One
I mean, it
story.
was one of those times when
One
me and Ray
story.
were
One
sitting in the
example.
same room.
Yeah.
We were like,
Oh my God.
and I
Yeah.
did
What
like
I
this.
mean,
what
I'm like,
what's
hey,
the
I'm here.
what's the next question?
Yeah.
And,
hundreds of people
Yeah.
standing there.
and the
Hey,
funny thing
Sergeant.
is that the brother was pre-briefed like early on.
Oh my Lord.
Like when he first came on staff, I remember we sat down and had a very pointed conversation about
I
that
remember
very
that.
thing, And so I'm like, yeah. So actually to just sit back and watch it unfold, like,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that was definitely not a myth. That was no misconception. That was the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mom,
But
if
he,
you're watching this, don't listen to
Yeah.
anything they're saying.
Oh no, brother.
Oh,
You
mom,
one step below Shaft. You one step below Shaft, brother.
mom raised him. She know,
Mhm.
she
You
know,
know.
and I'm sure she
Denver,
understands.
Colorado, 2009.
Oh my
Oh,
Lord.
2009. You
Hey,
can go
hey,
back
you know
to
what?
what?
You
2006,
know what?
2000. What was it?
I'm not even.
2003,
I'm not even gonna do that.
2003.
Oh
I'm
St.
not.
my
Louis.
Lord.
I'm not even gonna start calling dates and years out. Uh,
I was just saying that's when
one,
me and Ray were invisible in that big room
Invisible.
with the
Oh
sun
man.
shining in. Like I'm like, you see that?
Yeah.
Look,
That's the sun. You know what that means?
yeah.
That means we all can
2003.
see you.
I think
2003, St. Louis.
It's
I'm
the
out on the dance floor and I got people walking up to me talking about where's Sergeant Danley at? He better be up. Why you asking me?
All right, question
Yeah.
number 6.
I'm gonna blame Ray for taking us down this rabbit hole
Utah.
because
Utah. New Orleans. You just pick a spot.
Oh my
Just,
Lord.
y'all need to
Question
get on
number
brother.
6. What are what are your self-expect? What you say, right?
No, you good. Go ahead.
Oh, what are your self-expectations? I.e., what are the standards you hold yourself to?
I'll jump in. For me, it wasn't difficult. But I know growing up, my standards were set really high by me just because of who my parents were. So for me, I was trying not to disappoint them. I felt like I had to earn my dad's name. Like you guys know, for years I would not allow anybody to call me by my given first name of Raymond because that was my dad, and I felt like I hadn't earned his name. But after being able to experience being with him as an adult, um, it became clear that I was setting my bar way too high, and no matter what I did, he felt like I earned the name. But the other thing, the biggest expectation I have for me, seriously, is to be a better man and a better father today, or to be a better man, better father tomorrow than I was today. I just want to continue to make strides in that, and I had a conversation with my daughter today about that. I'm like, I just I want to be better for you, because especially knowing that we missed out on so much time in the past. So that's the main thing for me, is to be a better man and to be a better father tomorrow than I was today.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of stealing each other's answers here today because Ray actually just took mine, and mine is it's really just that simple. Those y'all know me, and I'm big into growth and development. And that it's very simple for me. I just want to be better tomorrow than I am today. That it's really just that simple. Those are the standards I hold myself to, is to just being a better person and learning and growing every single day. It's that simple. I mean, I could get deep with it, but it really is just that simple for me.
Samesies. No, just to add my own personal, words to it, but the exact same thing. Just a dogged determination to discover and develop the gift that is who I intrinsically am and everything that I have to offer. Because I always say it, what good is a gift if you don't give it away? And there's so many people whose lives will be impacted positively by the full complement of my gift. And so it's on me to develop it in its fullness, and whatever that takes, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, that I need to dig in deep and to develop myself completely across every spectrum so that I can cultivate that gift so that it can be effectively given to all of those whose lives will be enhanced by it.
Well, okay, what John said.
Yep, exactly.
All the big words
You know,
and expression. So mine is it's the same. Actually, it is be better today than I was yesterday, which is in essence the same thing Kevin said. Uh, and also to add to that is to positively impact the lives of the people I come in contact with.
Absolutely.
If I can do that, then that's what I expect out of myself, and hold as sacrosanct. So
Yeah, I think that one's for us. This collective group of brothers is that. Chapter 4 of my book, The Promise is Still Valid. Right. Chapter 4 is titled "Yesterday Was Good, but Tomorrow Will Be Better," and that's what we strive for in everything. I mean, in our relationships. I mean, all of us
Mhm.
are fabulous fathers. I look up to you guys as being fathers. We all had to go through some different circumstances to even be a good dad. And that alone, my mom told me when my daughter was born, she was like, if you do what you're supposed to do by your child, God will honor your request. And so I was like, okay, I get that. So I think we both strive to make sure that our tomorrow is better than our yesterday. Our yesterday might have been wonderful, but tomorrow we want to make it better for the next generation. I think we're all in that situation. We're at that point now. I think we're still striving for things to be better for us, but however, we're in that mindset now. What am I going to do for the generation after me? And I think once you get to that point where you're like, I have everything I need, but what am I going to do for the generation after me? And I think once you get to that point, then I think you have arrived as a person of values what you bring to the table. And I'll just leave it at that.
Good stuff. Yeah, I do think that yeah, we are at a little over an hour at this point. We do have other questions. So yes, I don't know if we want to do part two on the next episode or save it for another time, but we will figure that out. Um, I don't know if anybody has any closing comments or remarks they want to make before we move on.
yeah, I'll just say for anyone that listens to this episode, keep the questions coming. I think that's
Yes.
it's good to hear from people that have questions or wonder about things that they like us to answer. So I certainly appreciated that aspect of it.
Yeah, likewise, I'll say the same thing, and I'm gonna speak directly to my mom. Mom, we are going to get to your questions. I thank you very much for watching. Thanks for coming out. God bless and good night.
B, John, y'all good?
Y'all already said y'all already addressed mama, so hey, it's good after that.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us. And as we wrap up this week's episode, I want to leave you with a quote by writer, teacher, and entrepreneur Emily McDowell, who stated, "Finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, and unlearning, and excavation, or remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. Until next time, peace."